Hey, what's up? Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Today, I'm going to do something that I've been asked about a lot, and that is how to simplify trees and how to paint trees in a way that doesn't overwork them. It's very easy to overwork the foliage. We're going to keep it relatively simple so that whether you're a beginner or advanced, I believe you'll find this one useful. So without further ado, let's take it to the table and get started. So as I'm drawing the scene, let me talk a bit about our game plan. So one of the things I get asked about a lot is how to avoid overworking trees. Trees are, and foliage in general, can be very complex. And in this video, I'll attempt to address that in a way that makes sense and is simple. We're going to somewhat simplify the trees, but that's not even the emphasis here. My emphasis here is on how to simplify the leafy part, okay? One of the things that initially attracted me to paint this scene is the beautiful composition between the trees. And often when you have a lot of trees together, beautiful patterns can be created. So here we have one tree. I'm going to place another one right around here, going to the other direction. And next to it, there's a shorter one. And I'm going to make everything clear in just a moment. And here there's one closer to this one. If you can avoid even distances as much as you can, that's ideal. Okay, so make an attempt not to have anything be of equal distance. I know that can sound a little funny, but if you can, try it. Okay, try having every distance between each and every tree. We're going to explore actually composition in an upcoming video, but try at least, I'm going to move the palette for a moment, try at least to have everything in different distances, okay? Now here's the thing, so for the tree branches, I think most people don't have that much of a problem. I'm just going to plop them in around the lines I already marked. So that's the first tree branch. And notice how my straight lines aren't as straight, my hand is a little shaky, which will be to our advantage here, because the trees aren't fully straight, that's the whole thing. It's an organic shape and it's imperfect in the most perfect way possible. So I'm just gonna drop around the lines I put in again. The lines I previously put are just to mark the different spots. So here's one here. I think I drank too much coffee, so my hands are a little hyper. And here's one, the one that's close to the right is gonna move to the right like that, okay? Now, similar to what we did with the masking tape trick, we're gonna do a similar thing here when it comes to leaving highlights. So we're gonna leave them on the right side of the trees, because that's where at least I see most of the highlights going here. Let's have one tree that's kind of interesting, splits into a couple of main branches, like so, thicker, and then one here at the back, like so. Maybe you should have it go the other way around. We'll see about that. Actually, it doesn't matter as much, but let's go at it like this. Now, here's where most people get into trouble, and that's the leafy part. So I'm just following the contours when I draw it. So you see the contours of the leafy part, and it's all just one big shape to me. That's the beauty of it. Here I split some of the tree branches, okay? But just so that I know until where this part goes. You see, it's just one big chunk of foliage. That's for the drawing stage. I'm going to show you in the painting stage soon a couple of other tricks, okay? Now, for the background, we do have a lot of trees here at the back. We have this one that's closer to us. But we also have this, background layer of trees, if you will, that goes like this. A couple of even closer ones, lower hanging ones. Now here's what's really important, the shadows cast by the trees. So they're all going to go left. So we have this one, and making them in different distances from us also helps with creating interest, because you see how the shadows are also spread out in an interesting manner, like that. And then we're going to get this beautiful shadow coming across from perhaps other trees, okay? So you want to get that in like so. All of this is in the shadow. See this area? And it's just going to lead, hopefully, to a more interesting composition, okay? Now, there is a shed here. I'm going to drop that. It just doesn't matter as much. And there are a couple of other leaves here. But this is for the drawing stage. Now, let's talk about the painting stage. So what I'm going to do is, let's rearrange some stuff here. So what I'm going to do is, here's the game plan. We're going to do one initial wash. that's going to cover everything but the highlights. And then we're going to start placing in the actual elements. Now, I will leave the tree highlights white in this example, so the initial wash is going to paint everything around them. I do want to keep this fairly saturated and interesting in that regard, because I got to paint, and this is a personal choice, I got to paint quite a lot of more bland scenes, more muted scenes lately. I do want, for my own sake and sanity, to have this one a little more strongly saturated. So we're going to start with a pretty strong blue, I think. Let's add a bit of pure blue into that. And this is going to be our sky. And notice how with these small sizes, you can have a lot of fun and really take your time. That's what I love about it. Now, let's just pour in a bit more of pure blue, see, just to get some interest going. Now, we're getting to the trees. Here, I'm going to drop pure yellow, okay, into the mix, like that. And here's the thing. The foliage itself is misleadingly darker than you would think. It's very easy to be confused and think it's lighter than it actually is. So don't worry about really going strong here with the yellows. Look, I'm really digging through the well and going dark, because I understand that the foliage itself is much darker than it appears, okay? So don't worry about going even a little too strong here. I'm gonna add a bit of red to it, just to keep some interest in it. And then we can kind of go back to the sky here. So we go back to this blue. It's a bit tainted by the... Actually, let's clean it up a bit. Let's get it to be pure, okay? Something like this. Now here we need to start watching out for the highlights. So what I'm going to do is just very casually go around the tree branches I put. It doesn't have to be perfect, and we are painting pretty small here. So I'm going for an overall impression, as many of my paintings are. But you see, just especially around the main tree branches, I'm going to be a little more careful. Now, here's the good news. If we missed some tree branches or some tree barks that we want to have highlights on, the good news is we can always use opaque paint. We can come back with a bit of white or you know, kind of, what do you call it? Like I have this warm white, so kind of like buff titanium, similar, not exactly the same. And you can use these to bring back the highlights you've lost, so don't be too worried about, you know, missing the highlights. Okay, it's fine. It's not too bad. Now we're gonna get to the ground, and the ground, again, the green is fairly dark. I know it can look a little lighter, but it is quite dark sometimes. So I'm gonna get this whole thing a little darker than I think it should be. Okay. Like so. You see we're going back to some stronger green. And I'm going to add into this mix a bit of sap green, just to get a bit of a pure, you see. The sap green is very strong too, so it will be combined nicely with the rest. Now, a common mistake I see a lot of people make is their greens aren't varied. And look at how much variation we have here. We have yellow areas, we have red areas, we have all sorts of different areas and different color dominances. Even the grass here, I'm going to put a lot of yellow into. One of the main mistakes a lot of people make with greens is they just do one green all over the thing, and it ends up looking very, very artificial. That's the word I was looking for. So if you want to avoid that, be sure to vary your greens. You know, have a bit of sap, have a bit of new gamboge in it, have a bit of red. Play around with it. Greens are very rarely pure green, okay? Now we're gonna let this dry for a bit and come back and start adding in the tree barks and the foliage here. That's where most people have their problems. So let's let it dry and come back. So now this is fully dry, and what I want to do is, before we get to this main section, let's start with the muted section in the background, okay? It's not necessarily muted, but with the trees you see in the farther background. And I'm gonna try and go for a more muted color to really contrast with the trees that are more at the front. So I'm kind of picking up leftovers from whatever I got here. A bit of red, a bit of blue, a bit of yellow. And hopefully this, you see, that's quite neutral. We're going to use that. and get the entirety of the bottom part in. Another common mistake people make, again, is overworking their trees. So in order to combat that, we're making some elements of the foliage very loose and uni value, so it's just one value. You see here, just one value that's kind of in the middle, maybe even light. Let's get a bit more strength to it. It's gonna be too light. Alarms, sound the alarms. We're gonna need to work at it fast. So this, I think, is more like it. Just added a bit more paint, and let's dip into it again. Just get it a little darker, not too much. And continue moving on. So because this is gonna be at the front and it's gonna be so full of maybe details and at the risk of being overworked, I want, now I wonder if the background's too dark. But whatever, we'll stick to it. Worst case, it's gonna be too dark, it's not a big deal. So yeah, so this is the main actor here in the scene, which is why we want to get the background a little more muted, a little dumbed down, not with as many details, so that we don't run the risk of having conflicting focal points that are too conflicting, you know. Just be sure to, while you're working on these small shapes, you have the opportunity to be even more certain you get the shape actually correctly. Okay, so just take your time with it and try and get the shape a little more accurate. Now you see how we have 2 layers of foliage. I'm gonna make the separation here. We're gonna keep a certain area in the light. So you see how I make the separation between the top and the bottom? Just by doing this gap here. And if you look at the reference photo, you will see it. So hopefully that makes sense. The solution is always to just look at the reference. Sometimes you need to look at it a little longer. And sometimes it's the impression is there really fast. So take your time. If it doesn't make sense at first and you look at the photo and you're like, I don't know what to do with it. Sometimes it's just about taking your time and trying to let it come to you, you know, the impression. So I'm putting these gaps in between these trees that are a little darker, the gaps that is. And I'm gonna paint it all the way to the ground like so. And we're pretty much done with the background. Okay, again, we're keeping this fairly simple. Now onto this area. We already got a base, but we will need to, the lightest parts of the foliage you see are actually darker. So what I'm gonna do is start applying a wash, and then into that I'm gonna inject the wet in wet, darker spots. But here's the thing, okay? You wanna avoid overworking it at pretty much at all costs. So let me show you how I do it, at least one way of doing it. And that is to use a very unified shape. So no matter where I go with the edges, the main core shape is gonna be one single shape, that is. So I'm gonna switch to a bigger brush because this is too small. And this is gonna be my initial kind of tree value. We're gonna get it darker in just a moment, okay? And I need to work somewhat fast here. Let's make it more interesting with some yellows. Again, remember, you have to vary it if you wanna create some interest. The edges are gonna play an important role in creating that interest. Now notice how much contrast there is in the original photo, okay? So we're gonna aim for that in just a moment. Let's put in a bit of yellow in there. And now when we got a baseline, let's start injecting darker values into it, wet and wet, okay? So let's see what we got. A bit of blue here, a bit of red even to mute and neutralize some of the shadows, you see? And just one dark shape, not few dark shapes, not every single leaf like that, don't do that, okay? For this instance where we're trying to simplify things, try and have it in one go, as simple as you can. I'm gonna add a bit of this warm, ultra warm red. And again, whether you like this kind of look or not, that's up to, you know, stylistic choice and whatever you enjoy, generally speaking. But I do want you to take from this the simplicity and the shapes, okay? That's really key in my opinion. Get the shapes to be as simple as you can. And I'm all for, going more detailed, showing more of the details, working larger even. But just for starters, if you find yourself overworking things often, try go the other way around and see how that connects, okay? Try going a little looser like I'm doing here. Let's connect some of the tree branches here. Just putting in some of them already now at this stage. And out of this foliage, we're gonna go straight into the tree barks, okay, the actual tree trunks. So let me show you how I do this. I just go at it like that and connect, okay, it's all connected. If you can connect them, it will just simplify the impression for the viewer even more, okay? Now the most important part is to keep that highlight on the right. So I'm gonna try and avoid it, like that, you see? Like so. And just pull down some of these tree barks. If you get a bit of the paper's texture showing, which is going to be hard in these smaller sizes, that can be a plus because then you get this feeling like it's an actual tree bark. You see right here? The secondary lines of the brush. That's actually something that works to our benefit. So don't be scared by that. Connect this. Maybe this branch casts a shadow onto this tree like that. See? And just try to see what the painting, like the mindset is to think about what the painting needs at this stage. Does it need a little more detail here with the leaves? Go for it. Does it need a little strengthening here and there? The top parts, go for it. Does it need more branches coming out of the tree trunks? Go for that. You see what I mean? It's just about doing this a lot. If you can, for starters, not overcomplicate the foliage, that's good. Now don't forget, we do still have quite a lot of details here, so it's fine to go a little looser on the tree trunks, okay? It's fine not to include as many details there. Now here we get to another important part, and that is the cast shadows by the trees. I'm gonna add a bit of sap green to this mix, so that the shadows are a bit of a darker version of the already green that we have here. And if you can connect it to the tree barks while they're still wet, that's a plus, it's not a must. But it can just improve the overall flow of the painting. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Connect this one here, this one's to the back, this tree bark here. Sometimes you need to make these connections again. So I put this shadow and then I go back and add some details onto the tree bark, you see? Like so. And perhaps the tree bark expands, so we want to get these expanding parts with the shadow. It's a bit hard sometimes to explain. Sometimes I'm really bad with words, but hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to add a couple of other tree branches here. And lastly, let's add this beautiful shadow in the foreground. And again, I'm going to try not to do this the exact same sap green. I'm going to mix it up a bit and let's warm it. So I'm adding a bit of red to it. This will both warm it and neutralize it. So we have this kind of a shape that goes all the way from here, you see? If you can get it in one go and keep the freshness, that'll be good because it's so much so in the foreground. Also keep it thin because remember we see the ground at an angle. It's not in front of us like the trees, it's actually on the ground. So let's go at it like this. Let's add a bit more paint here. And I don't mind varying it into a bit of a stronger red like that. But it does play an important role in the overall composition and kind of connecting all of the bottom of the scene. You see how that works? I think that looks nice. Actually, we have another kind of shadow that's framing the right side, so let's close that off a bit. And this is mostly it. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you don't like the white as much. The white of the paper feels kind of sticking out, like it's sticking out too much. So what I'm gonna do here is just get a bit of as pure yellow as I can muster here, like so. And what we're gonna do is just add a touch of that to the tree trunks, just to make them a little more match with the rest of the color scheme here. I'm actually using the piece of paper as a palette. That's fun. So here we go. You see it just gets the tree trunks to look a little better and more connected, I guess, to the scene itself. Now, funny enough, I actually like the shape of highlights, so we probably will not have to change anything in that regard. I'm not gonna go over, you know, with white paint. It actually looks good to me like that. Now you may find, I think, one last thing, this now looks much better in my opinion, but you may find that there isn't enough of the clearer leaves and foliage. So let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna mix back this neutral kind of green, okay? And just to create some more layering and interest, let's add a bit of that foliage here as well. You see it does exist in other places, and I feel like having it just around here is a little too unnatural. So I'm gonna add a bit more of it, some chunks of it here and there, a bit of it here, just to add a bit of, to break through this very flat and unified shape. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Here we go, something like that. And I think with that we're done. So let me sign this one and remove the tape. I'm actually gonna do it while filming, because I haven't done it while filming lately. I'm gonna sign it really small here, above the shadow. Sometimes I like to stick my signatures in funny spots. If it's just a fun little piece like that, I don't mind that. And let us remove the tape and see what we got here. I'm going to move the palette away. And you can see here the border is going to be, I think, really good looking. The blue of the sky sticks out a bit too much. I would have neutralized it a little more had I done this one again. But I may make a larger version of this. But anyway, here it is. Up close. I hope you enjoyed this one. Just simplify it into one big shape and pay special attention to the edges. Okay, try and see this as just one big lump of foliage, and that's how you avoid overworking it. Don't go at it small dabs every leaf. It doesn't matter. Get the main shape in first. That's one of the key things I can say. And later on, you can slowly and gradually move towards more detailed work while still keeping it not overworked. Okay, now let's wrap it up face to face. So this is it for this one. I hope you found it useful, and once again, I know foliage can be challenging. Focus on the large shapes, focus on the big areas. Don't try to paint every small leaf. That's something you can definitely explore later on, or you can make the scene smaller and focus maybe just on one tree, one branch, one small group of foliage, and that gives you more freedom to add more details and leaves. Or paint larger, that's always an option, okay? But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have, I really would appreciate a like, and don't forget to hit the bell button to get notifications for when I post new videos. I know a lot of people are missing out on them because they let me know, so be sure to hit the bell button. I really, really appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you again in the future. And I hope to see you again real soon.